Roger, moving very quickly through the last 40 years, you leave the Department of Justice, you go to work for the Ford Foundation, you're in New York for a couple of years, and then in 1972, you come back to Washington and you go to the editorial board of the Washington Post, and in very short order, you write almost all of the editorials about the Watergate scandal, and you get a Pulitzer Prize. And I'm going to suggest to you that that's the beginning of a career as a writer, even though you are now a professor, that I think the larger world knows you as a writer, as an opinion writer, not only for the Post and later for the New York Times, but as a opinion person, somebody who puts his opinions out there, this is what I believe, and so on and so on. Now, we talked a lot about how those opinions may have been developed, but I'm just very quickly about the writing. It's interesting that when you're at the Ford Foundation, you mention associations you have with Gore Vidal, with Norman Mailer, with Leonard Bernstein, who's not a writer, but part of that artistic cultural world. And I'm wondering if those associations in any way affected this later writing period in your life.
I think the writing period was entirely attributable to my father. When he was dying, he died at home, and he was in bed, and he wanted to help support the family. And he sat in the bed with the Royal Portable Typewriter in his lap, and he wrote pieces that he sent out to magazines. I didn't know he was dying, but I knew he was very sick. And I knew he was determined to help the family. And then he died. And so it was just in my mind that that's what brave, strong people did, that you wrote and that you tried to part the fog, and you wrote because you were strong and you cared. And so if there had been a journalism job available to me when I graduated from college, I would have gone straight into journalism. So it wasn't all of those people. But by the time I went to the Post, obviously I'd had all these experiences that we've talked about. And so, and I was almost 40, so by this time, I'm pretty clear about an engaged kind of blackness being at the core of my life.
Yes, that's what I'm curious about, because it's obvious your father, by the very nature of what he did, believed that words had the power to transform events.
Right.
He wasn't writing kiddie stories. He wasn't writing romantic novels. He wasn't that kind of writer. He was this kind of writer. And so that's the example you have held up to you.
Right.
So when you actually become a writer, that's the example you're going to follow.
Right.